Hello and welcome to a very special show. It's 6 p.m. so it is time for the Bharat Atmanirbhar mission that is in joint association with NewsX and Business World. As usual, every day 6 p.m. I am joined by Dr. Anurag Batra, who's the chairman and editor-in-chief of Business World, and he, along with a number of his panelists, are going to shed some more light into what the business is looking like, how the economies are going ahead and bringing about a change in terms of the festive season that is just around the corner, and whether it's a V-shape, L-shape or a K-shaped economy, that's the consensus that we'll go ahead and draw upon after an hour of this discussion. Welcome on the show, Anurag Batra. It's great to have you as usual.
Thank you so much, Megha.
And
thank you. It's a pleasure to hold the show with you.
Absolutely. And what are we discussing today as the specific topic of conversation?
Today, Megha, as we've gone sectoral, we're discussing cybersecurity. We're discussing the growth of cybersecurity industry. We're discussing how does it impact a common person, our NewsX and Business World viewer, on day-to-day task and while they perform their official duties. Because all of us are spending more time online. So how the spends on online security will go up, why it's important, how can we deal with phishing, how can we deal with cyber fraud, and what's happening to this sector. So we have some of the best minds, brains, and entrepreneurs from the cybersecurity domain who have joined us to discuss this. Saket Modi, Advocate Puneet Bhasin, Rizwan Sheikh, Puneet, and Ram Sitapalli. So let me start with Saket. Saket, the last 200 days, all of us have spent more time digitally and doing whatever we do through virtual tools. So does that increase the risk of cyber crime, and give a sense of what is the kind of risk individuals are dealing with and what are the kind of risks corporates deal with?
So first of all, it's an absolute honor to be there on your show. And, I think the topic is very, very relevant, because I think just talking about my own business, I think the number of inquiries, our top line, bottom line, I think has been skyrocketing for the last 2 quarters, back to back, given the scenario where the dependence on technology for the business models to sustain today has gone up exponentially. Because today, I think, there's a popular joke which says, who was the person who was responsible for digital transformation of the business? Was it the CEO?
I know the answer. Owen is the chief digital officer.
Absolutely, sir. So I think given the dependence that today when you get hit on your technology, it is directly a top line impact, it's a bottom line impact, it's a reputational impact, and we've actually seen CEOs being fired when your organization gets breached. It has become a truly board level concern when you talk about enterprises. And when you talk about cybersecurity worry, I would say on an average I would be getting emails, anywhere between 1 to 2 emails from some senior executives saying that, look, I am very, very worried because there have been nation state breaches which have been going on, corporate espionage, because there's this new wave of hacker as a service, right? I'm sure you've heard of software as a service. I'm sure you've heard of infrastructure as a service, but there's this new wave of hacker as a service where you can go to the underground and all you have to do is basically give the email ID of the person or an organization which you want to be breached. And guess what? You don't have to pay any money out there. They will come back to you in a week or 2 weeks with some screenshots saying, look, is this the picture or is this the database that you're looking for? Once you see it and you understand that, yes, this sounds and looks like a legitimate database, only then you pay Bitcoins. It's almost like cash on delivery. You see the goods and then say that, then I want to pay the money.
That's very disturbing. That's very disturbing.
Yeah. And
are you saying, Saket, just for contextualizing,
Sure.
there are 3 broad segments. I'm simplifying.
Sure.
One is corporates, which means the CEOs of the promoters. The other is individuals / professionals. And third is government. Give us a sense of challenges. You just gave us one danger or challenge that we are dealing with. Give us a sense of what are individuals dealing with? What is the government dealing with? Of course, the government is quite capable of, anticipating such risks and dealing with them. But individuals sometimes and institutions, in spite of knowing the risk, do not prepare for it. So
yeah. I agree with you, and you're absolutely right, sir. Because one of the key problems of cybersecurity is you're never trained to use or be cyber enabled, right? I mean, the number of people who have smartphones in our country has exceeded 500 million, while the number of people who have been trained on using a smartphone would probably numbers you can count on your fingers, and that is what leads, because there's a very basic level of unawareness. I still get people which come to us and say, I can never be hacked because I have a fingerprint recognition on my cell phone. I can never be hacked because my cell phone was made by Apple, and therefore I'm sure that. So it's unfortunate which is there, but the reason I went into a generic way of the hacks which are happening is because if you notice, increasingly the boundaries between personal, professional, and government and law enforcement have been blurring more than ever since, right? So when you have a cell phone, it has your Arogya Setu app, which is connected directly to the government, but at the same time, it has your Instagram and Snapchat, and at the same time, you see your emails, which are very, very, professional, and, it really is about your professional identity. All of that is the same cell phone. And at a time where Jeff Bezos' pictures without clothes make it to the internet and he cannot protect himself, it just becomes extremely risky, especially when you don't have the right degree of awareness, knowing what cyber threats you get, especially with all the smartness, not just in the phones, but in your homes that you're getting in, and things around that. Happy to
connected homes, connected institutions are actually a playground for criminals in the cyber domain. And I come from marketing advertising. I started there. As a thumb rule, corporations would budget, large corporations which would have 30,000 crore turnover or 60,000 crore turnover, budget 4 to 5% of their revenue on marketing, which grew to 7 to 8% over a period of time. Tell us, going forward, is there a thumb rule for corporations allocating budgets to security? Should it be 1%, 2%, 5%?
So security budgets generally are a function of the budget of technology, sir, more than the direct function of the revenue of the company. Yes, the IT is a direct function of the total revenue of the company. So there is a relation that can be drawn. What we've seen is the general trend of companies which are publicly listed in the United States ranges anywhere between 6% to 12% of their total IT budget. So that's how cybersecurity is. In India, for publicly listed company, it would range anywhere between 0.5 to probably 2% is what we've been able to see. So cybersecurity spend has a long way to go in a country like India for sure. But globally, it has been on the higher side, but the acceleration has been the highest when you look at India.
Saket, we'll come back to you about the size of the industry and at what pace it's going. But let me bring in Rizwan Sheikh. Rizwan, you work with individuals, you work with corporations. Tell us what has happened to your business in the last 6 months, and how do you see your business over the next 6 months?
Okay, what I've seen is majority of the company, organizations and industries are facing big downfall because of the COVID scenario, and everyone is in the need of IT security service, but somewhere down the line they do not have enough budget to be spent on it. I majorly work with small level industries, mid-sized industries, where we have seen people are expanding a lot themselves in the digital world, where they force their employee to work from home, they set up a VPN connection themselves. They also set up few of the basic things for their employees to work from home. And since majority of the people are working from home, the risk of cybersecurity increases a lot. What I've seen is there have been majority of the attacks on the corporate world organizations, which includes attacking the individual first of all. It is very simple. Any unethical hacker who want to get any particular organization to hack into their data, network system, or any other information, the first target they will make is an individual or the employee of the company. And the common attack which any unethical hacker would prefer to do would be including something related to social engineering, something related to phishing, or some simple other attack which may include an attack of injecting a keylogger, a malware, or a Trojan inside the employee system. And once this is inserted in a single individual's or employee system which is connected to the company's network, it becomes very easy for the unethical hacker to penetrate inside the network of the company. somehow everything is correlated, and thus the individual security is also equally important when it comes to security of any organization. We have seen certain other different types of attacks in the cyber world which is happening recently, that also includes stealing of data from an individual perspective.
Data is the new oil. So
Yes.
clearly, if you steal data, you steal everything that the organization has.
Right.
Right. And it's not just the data. What they're doing is, after stealing someone's data, they do demand certain ransom amount from the company as well. We have seen this trend happening that your data is with us. If you do not want us to share to the public over the internet or over the darknet, please pay us this much ransom amount in Bitcoins. So this is kind of a trend which is happening recently, and many of us have seen already.
Rizwan, what can we do to kind of curb it as an organization, as a community, and as a civil society? Aren't we catching these cyber criminals, if I may use that term? Because I think cyber crime specialists and the police side have grown, but I say that the cyber criminals are a little ahead of the curve. They're always more innovative, and so you got to be on your toes. So give us a sense of what can individuals do and what can organizations do to be at a lesser risk. There is nothing called zero risk, but we can always mitigate risk. Give us some thumb rules.
Okay. So very basically, there are two things out of this. One is precautionary measures, another one is countermeasures. I would say precaution is better than cure. This is what we call. So one thing is required, that from before companies and even the individuals working in the company should follow some basic cyber hygiene methodology. And there might be huge possibility that majority of the systems or computers or mobile phones are already compromised and people are unaware of it, and someone is silently keeping an eye on them. So the second part comes is about curing it yourself. So two things I recommend over here. Some of the very basic cyber hygiene method that should be enforced by the company to each and every individual would include keeping a strong password. Number one thing, for every damn thing, for everything you use. And keeping a strong password, what a normal individual thinks, that if I have a password which has 12 characters length, then I'm safe. So I would like to clear it in a very simple term, that in order to have a strong password, the password must contain alphanumeric characters. That means it should have a capital letter, small letter, number and symbol in it. The password should be minimum 15 to 16 characters in length. I know people might feel it tough to remember, but once set up, definitely people can remember it. And the last and the most important thing in setting a strong password is making sure to change it every month. Because if someone is running an attack on certain offline things as well, and the attack may continue for a period of a longer time.
Passwords dynamic, and you also, we have to kind of use the help of experts to be able to see if we are already being breached and take corrective action. Right. Let me go to Ms. Puneet Kaur Kohli. Ms. Kohli, Saket mentioned that the cyber security spends of organizations are anywhere between 6 to 12% of the spends on IT. Tell us how somebody like you views it, and what are you doing within your organization to be able to better deal with this?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for the opportunity. And see, at the corporate level, I do agree with Saket as well that, anything within India subcontinent is between 0.5% to 2%, where the spends of the total IT budgets is on information security. So, but it's not about the deployment of tools and tools. It's just as an important awareness within organization also. The personal cyber hygiene or the information security hygiene runs from person to organization, organization to enterprises, and enterprises to general public as an awareness. That is what is the need of the hour. The wave is about going digital because of, not only because pre-pandemic, post-pandemic also, the flexibility of working from anywhere, which is giving organizations, to connect their endpoints to, where the data is coming, and, these vulnerable, we can say these vulnerable points where the endpoints from where they're hooking and, talking to your corporate plans. So the trust factor is something where data is coming, and, we need to know what our endpoints are, what the vulnerabilities are. So these are some areas where we have to take a very big call in terms of like, the end systems, what are getting connected. Technologies like Zero Trust, CASB is some of the need of the hour, or, probably SASME, which is where the secure trust works around within the organization, which is in terms of technology deployment. But at the same time, basic pillars like do's and don'ts, which is as an awareness, must be floating around to all the employees, of the organization, rather than compromise on the, the APTs or the phishing attacks, especially on the CXO level mail IDs, which gets compromised at point of time, which are vulnerable. So these are something which are, general hygienes which corporate should do from time to time. Coming home onto the individuals, at home also, in case, the compromise in your new device approach should be a device agnostic approach, where that even a personalized device should have a proper mechanism where, we access our data, we access our social media, and we don't log off every time, because already what we have, whether we go to Facebook, LinkedIn and all, we just log in once and it is an open vulnerability. So if we see that, we have an awareness where we see that, our data on our mobile would not be compromised. So I think so we are sitting in, some kind of a passive world. In active world, we should know that every time we use any of such core applications, we should have at least one common passcode which can give an access to our corporate applications or our, our personal applications also. So that syncage and, an understanding should be very, very clear. And this should same be circulated from top to bottom approach also when it goes to the organization. And wherever there is missing, I think so, such kind of awareness campaigns and all that stuff, even the internal teams can do. That is very much, which is the need of the hour.
Thank you, Puneet. We will come back to you and get more insights. Let me bring in Ram. Ram, if you had to be futuristic and paint the scenario 6, 12, 18 months from now, give us the sense in terms of spends on security, on other trends that will manifest in the cyber security domain.
Right. If I may, Anurag, first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. If I may, can I go back a little bit to focus on the consumer? Because I think, given that that's the core agenda of the day, the reality is, Anurag and team, most companies have, big companies have a CTO or a CISO who have the luxury.
And these days they have a chief internet security officer.
Yes.
Which they've had for the last 2-3 years.
Yes, and these big companies have the luxury of paying people like Saket, big money to provide them advice, right? But there's very little effort being put on the end individual. Because that's a question you've asked at least twice in this conversation. And maybe I'd like to focus a little bit on that. I think, if you look at what's happened the last few months, COVID has changed everything. There is now a very thin, if not a non-existent line between enterprise work and personal work. My laptop is basically a gateway point to my personal life as well as my enterprise life. Same with my mobile phone. If I look at my kids, they're doing exactly the same. They access school, we call it their work, their enterprise, and their personal data. And we don't have different devices, So when enterprises focus on security of their assets and their data, it is only thinking about themselves and not necessarily about the individual. So if I now connect to the dots to your question of what the future is going to be looking like, I think it's very important that individuals start to know and recognize that there is a digital you, right? That you have a digital footprint that you're creating every day, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's banking, whether it's social media, and that footprint is ever expanding, and that they need to protect the digital you. Today we take life insurance for granted, we take auto insurance for granted, we take travel insurance for granted, medical insurance for granted, but
we think it won't happen to us. We'll live forever. We are like
but at least it's part of the mindset of an individual that I can buy insurance. I need to protect my my life or my family. Individuals need to start to get to the point where they realize that protecting their digital profile is critical. So that's one part of what I'd like to say. The other is when people talk about CIS, Chief Information Security Officers, talk about their work, they're really talking about protecting assets at the server level, perhaps at the enterprise device level as well. But the reality is, and I've heard this straight from Justice B.M. Srikrishna a few months ago. He's the focus on the government advisor.
You don't have to introduce him.
Yeah. So he says, and I really love what he said, which is it's a cat and mouse game with these cyber criminals. So, you get all the experts trying to, create firewalls and other protections, but they figure out a way to hack into the enterprise data. So my digital footprint, if I trust an enterprise with my data, hopefully it is safe. But a company like Twitter got hacked into just a month and a half, 2 months ago, and very public figures' information was out there. So when despite the best efforts of an enterprise to protect data, you're going to have to, there's still a risk.
It will have to become a part of your DNA, of our kind of consciousness.
Yes.
To be able to be sensitive about it and deploy professionals and tools and also money to be able to think of it as a basic necessity. So we buy a car, we buy motor insurance with it. So
right.
Maybe there is a cybersecurity insurance product. I'm sure there's one. And Ram, let me come back to you now. Let me get Puneet Bhasin. Puneet, I want to ask you, heard all the 5 panelists. Are we being able to catch the cyber criminals? What are we doing as a society to be able to kind of minimize the risk? And what are the legal options open to an individual and an enterprise?
Good evening. Glad to be a part of this show. First of all, that whether we are able to catch the cyber criminals, yes, that is happening. The amount of reporting, though, happening is much lesser. So what happens in individuals, the number of individuals going to file an FIR is very less as compared to the number of times. So it's a very simple thing. If a person is going to lose 10,000 rupees, the chances he will go to a police station, pay an advocate to file an FIR and go through the whole process is much lesser. And the modus operandi of cyber criminals today is not to attack one person and take out 50 lakhs. Imagine going and hacking into 1 million accounts and taking out.
Okay, I think we'll come back. We'll have to come back to Puneet Bhasin. There seems to be a technical snag over there, but yes, go ahead.
Let's bring in Saket.
Yes, let's bring in Saket. Yes.
Congratulations. Last evening, the Government of India, Startup India, and Shri Piyush Goyal ji gave you the Startup of the Year award. What made Lucidius become that kind of a flag bearer for the cybersecurity industry? Tell us that, and we'll bring back Puneet into the conversation again.
Certainly, sir, and I think it's just we've been very fortunate to be working and defending not only some of the largest enterprises of the country, but also multiple government departments. And because as we started the debate by saying, or I should call it discussion these days, debate on TV is not the best,
Yeah, but NewsX is the headquarters of news, not of noise.
Exactly.
It's civil. So you can see I'm keeping my lungs secure, and I'm letting you guys talk. One person is talking at a time.
So yeah, absolutely. So we started on that side, that because the number of breaches have gone up, we've been very fortunate not only to go ahead and actually secure some of the most mission critical services of the government, of very large enterprises of the country, but also come up with something very unique, which is a platform. Because as you know, in India, unfortunately, we've produced some very large services company, but very, very rare are products which have really come out. Today, we actually have a product by which what Ram was mentioning, what Rizwan was mentioning, it's so difficult to actually go ahead and put your finger and say, look, if you do this, this is how secured you will become. And this is a constant problem at an individual level, at an organization level, at a government level, right? I mean, you asked Rizwan and he gave 5 things. I promise you that if you give him 2 hours, he can give 50 more things that really needs to be done to secure an enterprise. And you just can't learn it like this. And you don't have a thermometer of cybersecurity today.
There's no playbook to cybersecurity. There's no cookie cutter approach that works. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that there's no thermometer of cybersecurity, sir, that even if you apply a playbook, because playbooks are many, you don't know what works in what ways. Today, if you have fever, you take a thermometer, you say, I have 102 degrees Fahrenheit, and you take a paracetamol.
I hope not.
And
I hope
yeah,
not.
with COVID, of course not. And then you know that it's 99 degree Fahrenheit because it came down. You can objectively measure your fever. Unfortunately, there is no way to measure cybersecurity maturity which is standardized. So what we have done is we have come up with a way by which in a real-time basis, we give a score of how secured is a company, and that is used by the board of directors and the CEOs and the CISOs of the organization, which aligns them all. So that's a unique thing that we've come up with, and I have some of the largest Fortune 50 companies in the US today which have adopted this product and using it in their boardrooms. And that's the unique thing, and that's why the government of India, when we pitched it to them, they said that this is truly unique, not just in terms of the scale and size of the company that we are growing, but also as an idea which has a lot of potential in the future.
We are holding a very important, crucial discussion to not just the political scenario, but also when it comes to the economy of the nation. It is about the cyber security of individual firms, of individuals ourselves, as well as on a larger, broader outlook when it comes to securing our phones, securing the security of our personnel and our borders. And I would like to pose this question to Advocate Puneet Bhasin over here about the cyber laws, because this is, to be honest, let's come to terms with the fact that it's a nascent subject, something that has only happened in the last decade, and there are still laws that continue to be revived every single time there is some sort of a loophole that is found by the hackers. So if you could just reiterate for our viewers, what are the laws existing at this point of time? What is it that needs to be done further ahead, and how does the meaty industry go ahead, and the law minister and the minister of IT go ahead and bring about a larger change with regards to making stronger cyber walls for safeguarding individuals, companies and the nation on a larger scale?
Good evening, and to discuss this particular topic which you have mentioned, are the laws adequate, and does our nation have adequate laws currently? Yes. Now, we do have an Information Technology Act, we have the Indian Penal Code provisions which also apply for cyber crimes. But if you're going to talk about the adequacy of these laws, then on paper they may be adequate, but in terms of implementation and the nature of cyber crimes, I would say the traditional legislature and the approach of having frequent amendments which occur maybe in 10 years or 15 years. Like, I'll give you an example. The Information Technology Act is of the year 2000. The amendment happened in 2008, 2011, and today we are sitting in 2020.
Right.
So in this entire duration, now when we talk of cyber crimes, I'm sure the other panelists will also agree that every day there are dynamic changes happening. The nature of offenses is changing. So we cannot give a blanket definition. For example, if you go by the Indian Penal Code of 1860, the definition of murder, rape, etc., the same ingredients even remain true today. Now, when I'm talking about hacking, does the definition given in the year 2000 absolutely encompass everything I'm looking at in 2020? No. The nature of offenses, whether it may be cyber stalking, etc., the ingredients are not well defined. So if I would say from a subjective point of view, is this adequate, the current laws? I would say definitely not.
Yeah.
From an implementation perspective, we do not have adjudicating officers, courts in most states. In Maharashtra, we have a functional cyber cell, we have a court functioning, the magistrates take cognizance of matters, but this is not the situation in every state, which is pretty sad that many times when clients come up to us, we have to actually tell them, okay, you are from a certain city or state, and sadly there you may not end up getting the right guidance from the police, or again the chances that action will happen in the court further thereafter is very, very questionable, because probably even the adjudicating officer's court is not functional there. So what we actually require at this point of time would be a good law which is amended frequently. So the infrequent concept of the way legislature works with legislations can work, let's say, for the Indian Contract Act. It can work with respect to matrimonial laws, like your definition of marriage will never change. The grounds for divorce are not going to change. But when you're talking of cyber crimes, the nature of crimes is dynamically changing.
Absolutely.
So you cannot have the same law sitting for 30 years, or like the Indian Penal Code, where the same definition of murder and rape from 1860 is going on and still applicable today. And you have cyber crimes which are changing on a daily basis. The modus operandis are changing, the ingredients of crimes are changing, and we are sitting on the same legislature. So ideally, in my opinion, I know it may sound very impractical, but we need to have an active team of the legislature, which is constantly reviewing the scenario of the industry. What's happening? What are the corporate frauds happening with respect to in the cyber crime space? What are the data thefts happening? Is the data protection adequate? What are the crimes against individuals happening in cyberspace? What are the IPR offenses happening in cyberspace? And taking, you could say, action with respect to each of these things and amending the laws routinely. So I don't say a monthly amendment, that's impossible. But let's say having annual reviews of it so that, we are always abreast with criminals. So what criminals take advantage of today is that the law is 2 steps behind and they are smart enough to run 2 steps ahead.
Right.
So I don't say that, why we are talking about the cat and mouse game which Ram was mentioning. The primary reason for this, according to me, is the legislature being always outdated. So by the time, the parliamentarians get up and start discussing things like we are talking about data protection today in 2020. Data breaches have been happening from the year 2004. So imagine you have given benefit to criminals to function in a manner for the last over a decade, and today suddenly you're waking up and then you're making a law and still the enactment of it is still pending, which is absolutely needed. So the reason the cat and mouse game is genuinely happening is because we are at a putback, and on purpose or for whatever reasons I do not seem to understand.
I mean, definitely not on purpose, and yes, we must definitely be fighting it out.
How much convictions are happening? And what about, sullying the reputation of people anonymously? That's also a cyber crime. Right?
Yes.
So do you think that we need to have trained officers, manpower, domain experts to be able to detect cybercrime and to be able to take the process of law forward and do convictions, that it becomes a deterrent for people not to have anonymous accounts and defame people. Cyberbullying is another whole, like in real life you bully somebody, you can cyberbullying of children is a big issue. So what are we doing to be able to build a workforce in the police, in the various government services that enforce security and enforce our laws to be able to deter other people not to do it?
See, currently what is happening, the conviction rate is there. If you're going to talk about a conviction rate which is going to be really high in this space, then that is not there. One of the key reasons being that data has to be obtained from social media companies or let's say Gmail, etc., with respect to in order to obtain convictions for evidence. Now, these companies are hosted in other countries, getting the data recovered from there, all of it is a process. And many times the evidence is lost in that process. So that's one of the reasons why the data protection law is needed. And ideally, it should even have provisions wherein actually data can be retrieved from these companies with respect to any offense which has occurred in India. So one of the main things in the prior draft was that, they have to have data centers in India. That was actually very beneficial because that would actually enable officers to gain access to data very easily for convictions. Even courts would be able to demand all of this. And right now, it's a very long process. Like, you're going to go about reaching out to the company. They will say, we are headquartered in the US. The laws of the US apply to us. Get a court order. You will approach the court over here. The court will issue an order then thereafter. And, probably a period of 90 days or 1 month or 2 months or 3 months, whatever is their data policy, that period will cross. And then they will say, oh, it's up to 6 months. We can actually host data, or we hold data only for the 3 months or 5 months. And, sorry, we don't have the data. So, we have a system, we don't have a strong law in place which is allowing people to take advantage of
law that is contextual, because the pace of change in technology and internet is so fast, and our laws and implementation need to keep pace with that. I don't think that's happening. I think there is a consciousness on cybersecurity. That's why we're doing this show dedicated. But I think we have a long way to do that. Ram?
Ideally, I think the best method over here is when we are actually expecting only the government or the police to take action here. Ideally, I would suggest there should be a team of private advisors which the government should do. Because what's going to happen is, you have politicians, you have even bureaucrat IAS officers working in this space, police officers, but if they are going to be day-to-day involved in the latest developments of cyber crimes or cyber security or the technology, then I'm sure like all the other panelists, they're not going to be on a day-to-day basis abreast with everything. So they have a bigger portfolio. So having a specialized team working with the government is something that will enable them to know, all the loopholes, what's going on and how to ensure that everything is abreast. And I think in the COVID period with the economy going digital, so I don't think even demonetization did anything for digital India as much as, the COVID situation. Everybody today is using digital wallets. They are using online payments, credit cards, debit cards, left, right, center, payment wallets also. So in such a scenario, you are actually giving full access to criminals, and the cases have increased tremendously in the last 3 to 4 months.
Right, absolutely, and the fact that it's not just the national scenario that is like that. If you take a look at the international scenario, where the United States, 2016 elections, they were completely fudged, that were hacked. That was like a massive scandal that had come out. 2018, 2019 again, and 2020 elections again. There's a Chinese hacking espionage cases that have been happening in India as well. We have some 100 plus all these mobile apps that have been gone ahead and brought about into the scanner. They have been banned. So this is all action that is being taken. And only yesterday there was a pact that had been signed between India and Japan, wherein there is a cyber security pact which is going to further strengthen our border walls, our security walls. So that's I mean, this is an ongoing issue. This is going to have a lot of brainstorming. And like you rightfully mentioned, there needs to be a team that needs to be extremely dynamic and be the eyes and ears of the ministry over there, of the IT minister, of the set of secretaries that are going ahead and forging these laws and guidelines. And then again, it's a global process that the entire world will have to come together and fight it out, and that's the only way. And if Dr. Batra, what do you make of this entire set of developments that we are talking about?
I think, Megha, it's early days, and work from anywhere. I don't call it work from home.
Yeah.
The WFA has made data insecure, especially, let's say, if you're a conference organizer and you have all your delegates' data, which is what is of value, or sponsor data, or you have deal data, pricing data, it's of a lot of value. And I think we need to raise our consciousness and focus a lot on these. Because I think in the last 6 months, the acceleration was of such a level that we have been busy dealing with the changes and growth. Ram, what do you think should be done by corporates to mitigate the data risk? Is there a playbook?
Well, my focus is mostly on the end consumer and end consumer services. So if it's okay with you, I'll focus on the end consumer side, or would you like to hand the question to
I'll take the question to Sakit. For the benefit of NewsX viewers, our individual data security is also very, very important.
Yeah. So
is there a playbook for individuals? Transactions.
So there is. First of all, despite a corporation's best efforts, data might leak. That data, and I think Saket or Rizwan was mentioning it earlier, is often sold on the dark web. In my particular case, I've got my identity, my access email ID and passwords found in the dark web for everyday services that we use in India. I won't mention those names here, but my password was found in the dark web. So you need to focus on those sort of things. So while a corporation is trying to protect data, leaks still do happen. That's one. The second is 80 to 90% of crime happens through the smartphone as a gateway. So you need to protect your devices. And it's not just you, it's also your wife, your spouses, your children, your parents. All of these are gateways for a criminal to access an individual's data. That's point number two. Point number three, we would say, is think about your financial profile, your credit profile, because with your good credit, with your good score, I can do damage. And I've got in our office real life examples where innocent little kids who have a decent credit score, make 7-8 lakhs, have had their credit destroyed and inability to even get an auto loan or a motorcycle loan because something happened a year or 2 years ago. There are ways to track them. There are ways to figure that out as it's happening in real time. So think about your credit profile. And the last one is basically education. And when I say education, I mean, become more savvy as an individual. In the last few months, every time I logged on to ICICI or HDFC or other banks, you'd see a banner that says, watch out.
Yeah.
There's a risk. Well, what does it mean for an individual to watch out? Other than you telling me to watch out, how do I use that data? And I think there is a valuable role for the media and for providers like Saket, Rizwan, myself, as well as the two lawyers, Puneet, to help play a role in increasing consumer education on exactly what they can do. So there are solutions, there are capabilities that clearly can help out an end consumer, and that's the space we're trying to.
Thank you so much, Ram. I also want to bring in Rizwan. Rizwan, if you had to make 3 predictions for the future, both on the enterprise level or individual level, or at the government nation level, what would those be?
Okay, one thing is pretty clear that the number of cybercrimes are gonna increase a lot, which is already happening. The evolvement of cybercrime is huge, and when we were earlier talking about cyber law, one of the major difference in internet world and the cyber law is that cyber law is territory bounded, whereas internet do not have any geographical boundary. And this is where the major disruption arises. As the advocate Puneet was telling, that getting the data from somewhere it's a big thing. And the basic prediction which I make for the future is that the number of crimes being done anonymously is gonna increase a lot, where people will be not just using a VPN or a proxy, but they will be not only behind Tor services, but also behind dark web and the dark side of the internet. And tracking
an individual will need a personal data security consultant, or so to say, somebody like we go to our nutritionist or a dietitian. We go to
as Ram said,
we'll need a data security saloon that we will need to go to every 30 days, 15 days, every week, and I really need it in a serious way.
Yeah, and this is where the awareness comes into picture. If you see the current generation, the young kids are smarter than the generation we are living into, the older people, when it comes to technology, right? The same is happening. Usually the cyber criminal sitting across the world can be a young person sitting somewhere across, can be a team or a group of hackers, or a state-sponsored hackers as well by any disputed country's government. So coming to the basic cyber hygiene methodology and enterprise security models, there should be certain cyber hygiene methodologies that should be followed by everyone in order to avoid this. So this is where the education and awareness comes into picture. And I am pretty sure the word ransom comes into picture from physical world to the virtual world. Earlier, kidnappers used to kidnap people and demand the ransom amount. In the current world scenario, we have seen ransomwares, we have seen data leaks and demanding ransom amount. And there have been some very danger level of crimes happening as well, which includes a leak of your personal photographs or personal data, and then ransom is demanded in order to avoid it leaking over the internet. So I am pretty sure these things are going to increase a lot, where we definitely need huge countermeasures, security methods, awareness, and that's the only solution. There is not a fixed single point of solution, as Saket said. Definitely many tools and softwares are coming into place, but at the end, the education and the awareness level matters a lot into this. This is what I say.
Puneet Kaur, Kohli, you heard all the panelists. Going forward, what are your top 3 predictions in terms of how CISOs, the Chief Information Security Officer, whatever you can call them, Chief Information and Data Security, whatever you want, the head of security for an enterprise, what will his or her top 3 priorities in future would be? And if you had to kind of put a number to where the spends would be, if that, let's say if they're 0.8% as an average, do you think they'll double to 1.6%? Where are we headed?
Okay, so first of all, I would like to, basically go along with all the panelists, especially with Puneet Bhasin, saying that like we need to have a sort of a consolidation at the regulatory level. So implementation of the laws has to be much faster, and execution of the same has to be much faster, the way the pace the technology is moving. Now, if you talk about TRI regulations or you talk about data security, financial services have to have their data within the home country localization of 7 years and 10 years respectively. So the consumer data, enterprise point of view, the consumer data is something which has to have a lot of effectivity. So people have to take, a very stringent efforts in terms of the data localization, and they should have a full clarity where the data has been hosted, and they should have there is a policy where they said if the organizations get breached, they need to have a declaration as per IT privacy law. So I think so. Not only a declaration, much before that, an execution and awareness should be in place. So there comes an awareness where Ram said that I opened the ICICI Bank or HDFC thing, and they said that watch out. Watch out to know what kind of consumers are we really catering to. These consumers could be your customer with self-service portals or an assisted model from the rural masses who do in digital India a lot of transactions, but they are not aware how the data can be breached. So search engines, speech engines in virtual, vernacular languages, give them engagement to them, maybe in the form of animations if they don't understand technology, or they don't have mailers, or they don't have an SMS, they don't have the medium where exactly they are headed to. I think so personalized, apart from the government players, a personal advisory where a collective action from the social responsibility of an individual should also come to create an ecosystem, at least within the framework of the ecosystem where they are moving. At least that kind of an awareness they can spread, even in their, their four walls or outside their, network or neighborhoods. If at least one of the person also takes that collective action, I think so where India would be headed, you can understand. It would not be a responsibility only of the cyber laws. So if we see that we are fully, protected in terms of deploying number of boxes or new technologies and everything, but we need to understand the dark web is working 2 steps ahead of when we are protecting our data. So we have to be very vigilant about it, especially the CISOs and CIOs, to understand the data is the new oil and where this data is coming from, the cleansing of the data at the regular intervals, the review mechanism should be very, very well aware, and the custodians of the data within the organization should not reside only with technology and information security. Everybody has to take a call that when they're using the same medium or the device, their personal data and professional data has to have a segregation. They need to understand that.
Thank you so much, Meet. Saket, let me ask you, you started by saying that, you have come up with a product or a dashboard, if I may use the term, which can help CEOs or boardrooms or leadership teams to be able to have a security roadmap implemented and possibly anticipate and mitigate. Rizwan rightly said, prevention or precaution is better than cure, whether it means your own health or your own cyber health. So tell us, what are the 1 or 2 things that we can do, which can be very simple, not involve too much investment, but still make us relatively safer? You'll have to unmute yourself, Saket. Unmute is the second most popular word of 2020.
Yeah, after going online, yes. I know, and I echo what Rizwan said, but I do know the part where what he said that you liked the most when he put you and him on the same generation. And,
Clearly, I'm younger than you and Rizwan.
Of course, that's why I was saying, I was surprised. But to your point, for individuals, I think the number one thing which I always keep recommending, and I'll give you one technical and one non-technical thing. It's one, not even 3, right? On the technical side, most people don't realize that your probability of being breached, your email accounts, your bank accounts, come down by more than 90% if you enable 2-factor authentication. It's something really simple, 0 cost involved, but it actually drastically, I'm talking about, and this is backed by a lot of hack data, where 90% of frauds which happen do not happen if you have a very simple 2-factor authentication enabled.
And explain to our viewers, what does 2-factor authentication mean?
It is very simple. When you log into your email, go to your settings, go to the password settings, and every email provider today, whether it's Gmail, Yahoo, Hotmail, any of these guys, all of them will give you an option of 2-factor authentication. What does it mean? It simply means that when you go to gmail.com, you enter your username and password. Your password is the first factor of authentication. If you enter the right password, it will then send you a code on your mobile phone. You take that code, it will be a 6-digit numerical code that you put on the system, and only then you're able to log in. That's the second factor. So if a hacker whether it's through the dark web or even by hacking into your system and monitoring your keystroke, is able to find your password, they will not be able to go ahead and read your second factor authentication. Now, there are ways to evade that also. So it's not like if you do that, there's nobody on the planet which can hack you. However, those are more advanced ways, and the probability of you being breached comes down significantly if you enable a two-factor authentication on the site. However, the more intelligent thing to do is the non-technical thing, which I always like saying. There are always two types of people on the planet. One who know that they've been hacked, the other who don't. What that simply means is that if you use the internet with the assumption that anything that you do today can come out to the public tomorrow, if Deepika Padukone would have thought that, she might not have been into a lot of trouble today. And it's not just Deepika, it's actually most people which don't realize that every time you send out a private message on a Snapchat or even on a WhatsApp or on an email, it is not really private. There's a lot which can happen, not just today, but even tomorrow. I have not taken a backup of my WhatsApp chats for the last 10 years. But you know what? WhatsApp has this thing which still shows you have 20 KB of backup, because the first time I got WhatsApp and I had not disabled my cloud backup, that 10-year back data of my chat is there on WhatsApp cloud, and WhatsApp even today does not give me an option to delete that. And that's the problem. Most people don't even know that.
Right, absolutely. I think ignorance with regards to data laws, ignorance with regards to the protocols that need to be followed.
Ignorance is bliss in this case.
Definitely.
Right, I think ignorance is, especially when it comes to data security and privacy to such issues, is definitely not bliss. And I stand very, I become much more aware with the discussion that we've had over here, and so have hundreds and thousands of people who have tuned in today. Thank you very much, all my guests, my panelists over here, and Dr. Batra as well, for bringing in such an enlightened panel to give us more information about a subject that is extremely pertinent in the socio-political scenario that we find ourselves in.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.